The stars outside the window looked cold and far away. Captain Rena stood on the bridge of her ship, the Thunderpaw, and watched the endless darkness of space. She was a Valorian, one of the great cat warriors that ruled this part of the galaxy. Her fur was thick and gray, with streaks of silver that showed her many years of battle and command. Her eyes were golden and sharp, able to see in the darkest places. The Valorians were proud creatures. They walked on two legs like humans, but they had the faces and bodies of great cats. Their claws could cut through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. They were fast, strong, and feared by every species that knew them. For thousands of years, they believed they were the greatest hunters in all the stars. On this day, the Thunderpaw was traveling through the outer colonies, far from any busy space lanes. It was a quiet mission, carrying supplies to distant Valorian outposts. Rena expected nothing interesting to happen. Then the distress signal came. Her communications officer, a young male named Duke, turned from his station with wide eyes. The signal was weak, barely holding together, coming from a small ship drifting in the darkness ahead. Rena gave the order to investigate. The Thunderpaw changed course and moved toward the damaged vessel. As they got closer, they could see it was a human colony ship. It was small and old, the kind that poor human families used to travel between worlds. The hull was torn open in several places. Scorch marks covered the metal. Something terrible had happened here. Rena sent a boarding team to search for survivors. She did not expect to find any. The damage was too great. No creature could survive such destruction. But she was wrong. In the deepest part of the ruined ship, hidden in a small storage room, the boarding team found a human child. She was a girl, maybe 12 years old by human counting. She sat perfectly still in the corner, wrapped in a thin blanket, watching the Valorian soldiers with calm eyes. The soldiers were surprised. Humans were known to panic, to scream, to cry when faced with danger. But this child showed no fear. She simply looked at them and waited. They brought her back to the Thunderpaw. Rena met the child in the medical bay. The ship's doctor, an old female named Grace, checked the girl for injuries. There were some small cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. The child was healthy, just hungry and tired. Rena studied the human carefully. She was small and soft, with pale skin and dark hair that hung past her shoulders. Her eyes were brown, deep and quiet like pools of still water. She wore simple clothes, torn and dirty from her ordeal. The girl's name was Emma. When Rena asked what happened to her ship, Emma explained in a soft voice. Pirates had attacked them. Her parents, her older brother, the other families on the ship, they were all gone. Emma had hidden in the storage room when the attack began. She stayed there for 3 days, eating emergency rations and waiting for rescue. 3 days alone in a dead ship, surrounded by the bodies of her family, and the child showed no tears. Rena found this strange. Humans were emotional creatures. They cried easily. They broke under pressure. Yet this small girl sat before her with the calm patience of a hunting predator waiting for prey. Rena decided to keep Emma on the ship until they could find a proper human settlement to leave her at. This could take weeks, maybe months. The outer colonies were vast and empty. She assigned her own son, Coda, to watch over the human child. Coda was young and eager, still a cub by Valorian standards, though he was already taller than most humans. His fur was brown with black spots, and his eyes were bright amber. He wanted desperately to prove himself as a warrior. Coda had 2 littermates who always stayed close to him. Mira was his sister, quick and clever, with fur the color of autumn leaves. Theo was his brother, the largest of the 3, strong and proud of his growing muscles. The 3 cubs were not happy about their new duty. Watching a human child was boring work. They wanted to train, to fight, to prepare for their first real hunt. Instead, They had to babysit a soft little creature with no claws and no fangs. Emma noticed their unhappiness but said nothing. She followed them quietly through the ship, learning where everything was. She watched how the Valorians moved, how they talked, how they lived. She asked simple questions and listened carefully to the answers. The crew of the Thunderpaw did not know what to think of her. She was so quiet, so still. When she sat, she could stay in one position for hours without moving. When she walked, her footsteps made almost no sound. It was unnatural for a human. Humans were supposed to be loud and clumsy. Myra whispered to her brothers one night when they thought Emma was sleeping. She said the human girl was strange. She moved like she was hunting something, always watching, always waiting. But what could such a weak creature possibly hunt? Theo laughed at this. Humans could not hunt, he said. They had no natural weapons. Their bodies were slow and fragile. They survived only because they built tools and machines to do their fighting for them. Without technology, a human was nothing but easy prey. Koda was not so sure. He had noticed something in Emma's eyes, something old and patient. It reminded him of the stories his grandmother told about the ancient predators of Valoria, the ones that hunted not with speed, but with something else, something more frightening. But he did not say this to his siblings. They would only laugh at him. Emma heard their conversation from her sleeping place. She heard everything. And in the darkness, she smiled her small, patient smile. She was used to being underestimated. Her grandfather had told her many times that this was humanity's secret strength. Let them think you are weak, he would say. Let them believe they are superior. And when the time is right, show them what humans really are. Emma missed her grandfather. He had died 2 years ago, back on Earth, but his teachings lived inside her, passed down through countless generations, all the way back to the first humans who walked the ancient plains of Africa. The hunt was always waiting. Patience was the key, and Emma had more patience than any Valorian could imagine. She closed her eyes and slept peacefully, dreaming of tall grass and endless horizons, and the sound of her grandfather's voice teaching her the old ways. 3 weeks passed on the Thunderpaw. Emma learned the rhythms of the ship, the sounds it made as it traveled through space, the schedules of the crew. She ate with them, walked with them, and slowly became part of their daily life. The Valorians were not cruel to her. They were simply confused by her. She did not act like the humans they had seen before. She did not complain about the food, which was mostly meat and very bland. She did not cry or ask for special treatment. She simply adapted, changing herself to fit her new environment like water filling a container. Koda found himself spending more time with her than his duties required. There was something fascinating about the human girl. She noticed things that others missed. She could tell when someone was upset just by watching how they walked. She remembered every detail of every conversation. Her mind was sharp and quick, even if her body was soft and slow. Myra and Theo were less impressed. They continued to view Emma as a burden, a weak creature they had to protect. Theo especially enjoyed reminding everyone how superior Valorians were to humans. One evening, the whole crew gathered in the common hall for the evening meal. This was a tradition on Valorian ships, a time for sharing stories and building bonds between warriors. Captain Rena sat at the head of the long table, and her cubs sat near the middle, with Emma between them. The food was served, great slabs of cooked meat and strange alien vegetables. Emma ate slowly and carefully, cutting her meat into small pieces. Theo watched her with amusement. He began to tell a story about his first hunt on their homeworld. It happened last year, he said, during the time when young Valorians proved themselves as hunters. He had chased a swifthopper, one of the fastest animals on Valoria, across 3 kilometers of open grassland. He described how his legs burned, how his lungs screamed for air, but he kept running. pushing himself faster and faster until he caught the creature and brought it down with his own claws. The other Valorians at the table nodded with approval. This was a good hunt, a worthy achievement for a young warrior. Theo looked at Emma with a proud smile. "Humans cannot hunt," he said loudly so everyone could hear. "Your species has no speed. You cannot run fast enough to catch prey. You have no claws to kill with, no fangs to bite with. Your ancestors must have survived by eating scraps left behind by real predators." The hall became quiet. Everyone looked at Emma, waiting to see how she would respond. Many expected her to be embarrassed or angry. Some expected her to cry. Emma set down her eating knife. She did not look angry or sad. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. When she spoke, her voice was soft but clear. She said that humans hunted differently. Theo laughed. "Differently," he repeated with mockery. What could possibly make up for being slow and weak? Emma did not react to his insult. She looked around the table at all the Valorians watching her. Then she spoke again. She told them about her grandfather. "He was a hunter," she said, "one of the last who practiced the old ways. Before humans built cities, before they made tools of metal and fire, they hunted the greatest animals on Earth. They hunted creatures much larger and faster than themselves. They hunted without claws, without fangs, without any of the natural weapons that other predators possessed." Myra asked how this was possible. Her voice was skeptical, but also curious. Emma explained that her grandfather taught her everything he knew. He taught her how to read tracks in the dirt. He taught her how to move without making sound. He taught her the art of stillhunting, the oldest and most powerful hunting technique that humans ever developed. Coda leaned forward with interest. He asked what stillhunting was. Emma looked at him with those deep, patient eyes. She said it was easier to show than to explain. Then she asked if they wanted her to demonstrate. The cubs looked at each other. This was unexpected. They had spent weeks mocking her weakness, and now she was offering to prove them wrong. Theo's pride would not let him refuse. He said yes immediately, eager to watch the human girl fail. Myra agreed too, though she was more curious than mocking now. Something in Emma's voice made her believe that this might be worth watching. Coda simply nodded. He had been waiting for this moment without knowing it. He wanted to understand the strange feeling that Emma gave him, the sense that she was more dangerous than she appeared. The news spread through the ship quickly. The human child was going to demonstrate a human hunting technique. Many crew members wanted to watch. Even Captain Rena expressed interest. The ship carried a biodome, a large enclosed space filled with artificial plants and animals. It was used to train young Valorians in hunting skills. The environment could be programmed to simulate different worlds and different prey. Captain Rena gave permission for the demonstration to take place in the biodome. She was curious about human hunting methods. In all her years of travel, she had never seen a human hunt anything without advanced weapons. The night before the demonstration, Emma sat alone in her small sleeping quarters. She thought about her grandfather and the many hours they spent together in the forests of Earth. He was a patient teacher, never rushing, always waiting for her to understand each lesson fully before moving to the next. He told her that humans were not the strongest animals. They were not the fastest. They were not the most dangerous in a straight fight. But they had something that no other creature on Earth possessed. They had the ability to keep going when everything else stopped. They had endurance beyond measure and patience beyond understanding. The old hunters called it persistence. They would choose their prey and follow it. Not chase it, but follow it. They would walk and walk and walk, never stopping, never resting, while their prey ran and ran until it could run no more. This was the secret of humanity. This was why they conquered Earth. This was why they would someday conquer the stars. Emma smiled in the darkness of her room. Tomorrow, She would show the Valorians what it meant to be human. Tomorrow they would learn why her species was not weak at all. She closed her eyes and slept without dreams, her body resting, her mind preparing for the hunt ahead. The second hour passed, then the third. The artificial sun in the biodome moved across the artificial sky, marking time as if they were on a real planet. Emma walked on. Myra had given up completely. She lay in the grass far behind them, communicating with her brothers through a small device in her ear. She told them she would wait for them to return. Her voice sounded embarrassed. She had never felt so weak in her life. Theo lasted a little longer, but not much. By the middle of the third hour, he collapsed against a tree and refused to move another step. His pride was broken. His legs trembled beneath him. He could not believe that a human, a small soft human child, was still walking while he could not take another step. He used his communicator to tell Coda what was happening. He said he was done. He said Coda should give up too. There was no point in continuing this foolishness, but Coda did not give up. Something inside him refused to quit. He needed to see how this ended. He needed to understand. He walked beside Emma, his own legs burning with exhaustion. Every step was painful. Every breath was hard. But he kept moving, kept pushing, kept following the human girl. Emma noticed his struggle. She slowed her pace slightly, just enough to make it easier for him. She did not say anything about it. She simply adjusted. Coda asked her if she ever got tired. His voice was rough and dry. Emma nodded. She said she was tired right now. Her feet hurt. Her legs ached. She wanted to lie down and sleep. But she would not stop. Not until the hunt was finished. He asked her why. Why keep going when it hurts so much? Emma was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful and distant, like she was remembering something from long ago. She told him about her grandfather again. She said he was the one who taught her that pain was just information. Pain told you that something was hard. Pain told you that your body wanted to rest. But pain did not control you. You controlled pain. You decided whether to listen or to keep moving. Her grandfather hunted until he was 70 years old. Even when his joints ached and his muscles complained, he walked into the wilderness and hunted the old way. He said that stopping was easy. Anyone could stop. But continuing when everything told you to stop, that was what made you human. Kod, I thought about this. The Valorians valued strength above all else. They trained to be faster, more powerful, more deadly. But they never trained to endure. They never learned to push through exhaustion. Their hunts were short and violent, decided in seconds or minutes. The human way was different. The human way was slow and patient and absolutely relentless. They found the deer herd again. The animals were resting in a small clearing, their sides heaving with exhaustion. When they saw Emma approaching, they tried to run again, but their movements were slower now. Their legs were shaking. Their heads hung low. Emma tracked them. The trail was easy to follow now because the deer were too tired to run far. They stopped more often. They stumbled more frequently. Their prints in the dirt were deeper, pressed down by legs that could barely hold their weight. The fourth hour came. Coda felt like he might die. His vision was blurring. His heart pounded in his chest. Every muscle in his body screamed for rest. Emma looked at him with concern. She told him he could stop. She told him he did not need to prove anything. He had already done more than his siblings, but Coda shook his head. He said he wanted to see the end. He needed to see the end. Emma studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded and continued walking. The observation windows above were still full of Valorians watching. They had been silent for hours, unable to believe what they were seeing. Captain Rena stood with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Some of the crew had started whispering among themselves. They said this was impossible. They said no creature could keep moving for so long. They said the human must be cheating somehow, using some hidden technology or drug, but there was no trick. There was only Emma, one foot in front of the other, refusing to stop. As the 4th hour ended, they found the deer again. But this time, something was different. The lead deer, a large male with impressive antlers, had fallen behind the herd. It stood alone at the edge of a stream, its legs trembling violently. It saw Emma coming and tried to run, but it only managed a few steps before stumbling. Emma slowed her walk. Her approach became even more careful, more deliberate. She was not rushing. She did not need to rush. The deer had nothing left. Koda watched in amazement. He finally understood what he was seeing. The deer had run itself to exhaustion. Its body had given up. Its will to escape had collapsed under hours of endless pursuit. It could not run anymore. It could only stand there and wait for death. This was persistence hunting. This was what humans did before they invented weapons and technology. They chose their prey and followed it until it could not run anymore. It might take hours. It might take an entire day. But the result was always the same. The prey would fall, and the human would be there. Emma told Koda to stay back. She approached the fallen deer alone. The animal looked at her with wide, terrified eyes. Its breathing was fast and shallow. Its tongue hung from its mouth. It had nothing left, no strength, no hope, no escape. Emma knelt beside it. In the simulation, the animal would simply disappear once the hunt was complete, returning to the computer system that created it. But this moment felt real. The deer's fear was real. Its exhaustion was real. She placed her hand gently on its neck. She spoke soft words that Koda could not hear, perhaps thanking the animal for the hunt, perhaps apologizing for its suffering. Then the deer flickered and vanished. The hunt was over. Emma stayed kneeling for a moment, her head bowed. Then she stood and turned to face Koda. Her eyes were different now. The calm patience was still there, but beneath it, Koda saw something else. He saw the ancient predator that lived inside every human. He saw millions of years of hunting, millions of years of pursuit, millions of years of never giving up. For the first time in his life, Koda understood fear. The biodome fell silent after the hunt ended. Emma walked back toward the entrance with the same steady pace she had used throughout the chase. Koda limped beside her, his body broken by exhaustion, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. They found Theo and Mira waiting near the dome entrance. Both cubs looked at Emma with new eyes. The mockery was gone from their faces. The pride was gone from their posture. They had watched the entire hunt through the observation cameras, and what they saw had changed them. Theo opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. What could he say? He had called humans weak. He had laughed at their soft bodies and their lack of claws. And then a human child had walked for 4 hours without stopping, hunting prey that could run 3 times faster than her. Myra asked how Emma felt. Her voice was quiet, almost respectful. Emma said she felt tired. She said her feet hurt and her legs were sore. She said she would sleep well tonight. Then she smiled, that small patient smile that had seemed so strange when she first arrived, that it did not seem strange anymore. Now it seemed terrifying. News of the hunt spread through the ship within hours. Every crew member had either watched it themselves or heard about it from someone who did. They gathered in small groups, talking in hushed voices about what the human child had done. Some did not believe it at first. They demanded to see the recordings. The ship's computer had captured everything, every step of Emma's 4-hour walk, every moment of the deer's slow collapse. The Valorians watched with wide eyes and raised fur. Captain Rena called Emma to her quarters that evening. The captain's room was large and well furnished, filled with trophies from decades of service. Rena sat in her command chair, her golden eyes fixed on the small human standing before her. She told Emma to sit. Emma obeyed, taking a chair across from the captain. Rena was silent for a long moment. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully. Finally, she spoke. She said she had studied many species during her long career. She had fought against warriors of a dozen different worlds. She had hunted the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. She thought she understood all the ways that life could develop, all the different strategies that species used to survive. She said she thought she understood humans. She knew they were clever, good with tools, able to work together in large groups. She knew they built great machines and spread across the stars faster than anyone expected. But she always believed their success came from their technology, not from themselves. She said she was wrong. Emma listened quietly, showing no reaction to the captain's words. Rena leaned forward in her chair. She asked Emma a question. She asked what made humans keep going when everything told them to stop. She asked where that strength came from. Emma thought about the question before answering. She said humans had a word for it. The word was stubbornness. Or maybe the word was hope. Or maybe the word was spite. Different humans had different reasons for continuing, but the result was always the same. They did not quit. She told the captain about human history. She talked about explorers who walked across frozen wastelands for months. She talked about survivors who lived for years on deserted islands. She talked about athletes who ran races that lasted for days, not hours. She talked about ordinary people who faced impossible situations and somehow found a way to keep moving forward. She said her grandfather believed that humans were the monsters from other species' nightmares, not because they were strong or fast or dangerous in a fight, but because they never stopped coming. If a human wanted to catch you, they would follow you forever. They would walk day and night, week after week, until you could not run anymore. Rena's fur stood up along her spine. She had faced many enemies in her life, but this description of humanity made her feel something she rarely felt. It made her feel like prey. She asked Emma if all humans could do what she did today. Emma said most humans had forgotten the old ways. They relied on technology now, on vehicles and weapons and machines that did the hard work for them. But the ability was still there, sleeping inside every human body. If they needed to, they could remember. If survival required it, they could become the persistence hunters their ancestors were. Rena nodded slowly. She said the galaxy underestimated humans. Everyone thought they were weak because they did not have natural weapons. Everyone thought they were soft because they needed air and water and comfortable temperatures. But those things were not weakness. They were just differences. She said the real measure of a species was not how they fought, but how they survived. And humans survived everything. They survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They survived their own technology trying to destroy them. They survived the void of space and the loneliness of distant worlds. She told Emma she understood now why humans would someday rule the galaxy. Not through conquest, not through war, but through sheer refusal to give up. Emma thanked the captain for her words. Then she asked permission to return to her quarters. She was very tired and needed to rest. Rena granted permission. But before Emma left, she said one more thing. She told Emma that her grandfather would be proud of her. Emma paused at the door. For the first time since she arrived on the ship, her calm expression flickered. Her eyes became wet. Her lips trembled slightly. She said she hoped so. Then she left. Years later, Kota became captain of his own ship. He traveled across the galaxy, facing dangers that would have destroyed lesser warriors. He fought pirates and monsters and things that had no name. But whenever the darkness seemed too deep, whenever his crew lost hope, he would tell them the story of the human girl who taught him the most important lesson of his life. He would tell them the Valorians were fast and strong and deadly. But humans were something else. Humans were inevitable. He would tell them about the little girl who walked for 4 hours without stopping, who hunted prey 3 times faster than herself, who smiled her patient smile while the universe underestimated her. And he would tell them that if a human child could do that, then they could face whatever challenge lay before them. They just had to remember one thing: never give up. Never stop moving. Keep walking, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how impossible it seems, until the hunt is done. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was the lesson Emma taught him. And somewhere out there, among the endless stars, Emma continued her own journey. She grew up strong and wise, carrying her grandfather's teachings to every world she visited. She was patient. She was relentless. She was human. And she would never, ever stop. The biodome doors opened with a soft hiss. Emma stepped inside and felt the warm air touch her skin. The dome was huge, stretching so far that she could barely see the other end. Trees rose tall around her, their leaves green and thick. Grass covered the ground, soft beneath her bare feet. Birds sang in the branches above. It felt almost like being back on Earth. The dome had been programmed to simulate a temperate forest. Streams of clear water ran between the trees. Small animals moved in the undergrowth. And at the far end, nearly a kilometer away, a herd of deer-like creatures grazed peacefully in a wide meadow. These were not real animals. They were synthetic, created by the ship's computers. But they behaved exactly like real prey. They could run, they could hide, and they could feel exhaustion just like living creatures. Behind Emma, the 3 cubs entered the dome. Coda walked first, his eyes wide with curiosity as he looked around. Myra followed close behind, her tail twitching with anticipation. Theo came last, his arms crossed, still confident that this would be a waste of time. Several crew members watched from observation windows high above. Captain Renna stood among them, her golden eyes fixed on the small human girl below. Theo looked at Emma and noticed she carried nothing. No weapon, no tool, not even shoes on her feet. He asked where her equipment was. Emma turned to face them. She said she did not need any equipment. Not for Stillhunting. Mira asked how she would catch anything without weapons. Even Valorians used their claws. Humans had no claws. Emma pointed toward the distant meadow where the deer creatures grazed. She said those were her prey. Then she spoke the words that would stay with Coda for the rest of his life. "Now I will show you Stillhunting," she said. The cubs froze in anticipation. Even Theo stopped his mocking smile and leaned forward with interest. Emma looked at each of them in turn. She told them to watch carefully. She told them to learn why humans became the apex predators of Earth. Then she began to walk. The cubs waited for her to run. They waited for her to sprint toward the prey with whatever speed her human legs could manage. But she did not run. She did not sprint. She simply walked, one foot in front of the other, steady and slow, moving toward the distant meadow. Theo made a sound of confusion. He asked what she was doing. This was not hunting. This was just walking. Emma did not answer. She did not turn around. She just kept walking. The cubs followed her at a distance. Their powerful legs could cover ground much faster than hers, so they had no trouble keeping pace. But they were confused. Where was the chase? Where was the excitement? This was the most boring hunt they had ever seen. Minutes passed. Emma continued walking. Her pace never changed, never slowed, never hurried. Her breathing stayed calm and even. Her eyes stayed fixed on the prey ahead. The deer creatures noticed her approach when she was about 300 meters away. Their heads lifted from the grass. Their ears turned toward the strange walking figure. Then, as prey animals do, they ran. The herd bolted across the meadow and disappeared into the trees on the other side. They were fast, much faster than Emma. In seconds, they were gone from sight. Theo laughed out loud. He said the hunt was over. She lost. The prey escaped. This was what happened when you tried to hunt without speed. But Emma did not stop. She did not show any disappointment. She simply changed her direction slightly and continued walking toward where the deer had disappeared. Coda asked where she was going. The prey was gone. Emma finally spoke without stopping her walk. She said the prey was not gone. The prey was just ahead. She would find them again. She reached the edge of the meadow and entered the trees. Her eyes scanned the ground as she walked. She pointed at marks in the soft dirt, hoofprints left by the running deer. She pointed at broken twigs and bent grass. She was reading the forest like a book, following a trail that the cubs could barely see. The Valorians were good trackers, but they usually relied on their powerful sense of smell. Emma had no such advantage. Her human nose was weak compared to theirs. But she did not need smell. She had her eyes and her mind, trained by generations of human hunters to see what others missed. They found the deer herd again 15 minutes later. The creatures had stopped to rest by a small stream, drinking water and catching their breath. When they saw Emma approaching, they ran again, and again. Emma did not stop. She marked their direction and continued her steady walk. This pattern repeated. The deer would run, rest, and run again. Emma would follow, walking without pause, never closing the distance quickly, but never falling behind either. An hour passed. The cubs were starting to feel tired. Their style of hunting used quick bursts of speed, powerful sprints that drained their energy fast. They were not built for long, steady movement. Their bodies wanted to rest, to lie down, to recover. But Emma showed no signs of tiredness. Her breathing was still calm. Her pace was still steady. Her eyes were still focused on the trail ahead. Mara sat down on a fallen log and announced she needed to rest. Her legs were aching. She was not used to walking for so long. Theo refused to admit weakness, but his movements had slowed. His tail dragged on the ground. His tongue hung from his mouth as he panted. Only Coda forced himself to continue. His pride would not let him give up before the human girl did. He walked beside Emma, struggling to match her pace. He asked her how she could keep going. He asked if her legs did not hurt. Emma glanced at him with a small smile. She said of course her legs hurt. Humans felt pain just like everyone else. But humans were special. Humans could push through pain. Humans could ignore what their bodies told them. This was their gift, their blessing, and their curse. She told him about the human body. She explained that humans could sweat, releasing heat through their skin, allowing them to move for hours without overheating. Most animals could not do this. They panted to cool down, but panting was not as good as sweating. Eventually, they had to stop and rest, but humans did not have to stop. Humans could walk all day and all night if they needed to. This was how the ancient hunters caught their prey. Not with speed, but with time. Not with strength, but with patience. Coda listened to her words and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He was beginning to understand, and what he understood frightened him.